The world's most valuable football club made close to 1.2 billion euros last season. And across Europe's top leagues, most clubs still lost money. If that sounds contradictory, stick around. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why some of the richest people on Earth keep buying clubs that lose money on purpose. Let's start with where the money actually comes from. Top clubs make revenue three ways: broadcasting deals, matchday tickets, and commercial revenue. Sponsorships, merchandise, stadium branding. For the third year running, commercial revenue has become the single largest source of income for the world's biggest clubs. Real Madrid sits at the very top of world football's revenue table, generating around 1.16 billion euros in the most recent season, the highest of any club on the planet. And unlike almost every other giant on this list, Real Madrid isn't owned by a single billionaire or a sovereign wealth fund at all. It's a members club, owned collectively by its fans called socios, who vote for the club's president. That makes Real Madrid the outlier. Almost everyone else on the list of the world's richest clubs is owned very differently. Barcelona sits second, at roughly 975 million euros, also member-owned. But from third place down, it's almost entirely private money. Bayern Munich, Paris Saint-Germain, Liverpool, and Manchester City round out the next tier, each generating well over 800 million euros a year. Manchester City in particular is controlled by Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan of the Abu Dhabi royal family through Abu Dhabi United Group, part of a wider operation called City Football Group, which also owns clubs in New York, Melbourne, and Mumbai. A few clubs down the list sits Newcastle United, bought in October 2021 by Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, which acquired roughly 85% of the club for around £305 million. PIF manages more than $940 billion in assets globally, making it one of the largest investors on Earth, let alone in football. Paris Saint-Germain follows a similar model. The club has been owned by Qatar Sports Investment since 2011, backed by Qatar's state wealth, turning a mid-table French club into one of the highest revenue teams in the world within about a decade. To try to keep this kind of spending in check, European football's governing body introduced financial fair play rules, later rebranded as financial sustainability regulations, limiting how much clubs can lose relative to their revenue over a rolling period. Several major clubs have already been fined or sanctioned for breaching these limits, which shows just how tempting it still is to overspend, even under the threat of punishment. Chelsea tells a similar story from a different angle. In May 2022, the club was sold to a consortium led by Todd Boehly and Clearlake Capital for £4.25 billion, at the time, the most expensive sports team sale in history. And Manchester United shows how ownership can split entirely. The Glazer family has controlled the club for years, but in February 2024, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's Ineos Sport bought a 27.7% stake for roughly $1.6 billion and took control of football operations, even without owning a majority of the club. So here's the question. With that much money flowing in and that much wealth behind these owners, why do most clubs still lose money? The answer is wages. Across the Premier League, the average wages to revenue ratio sits around 65%. Nearly 2/3 of every pound clubs earn goes straight to player salaries before a single other bill is paid. And it gets tighter further down the pyramid. In England's second tier, the Championship, that ratio recently hit 94%. Clubs spending almost everything they make just on wages, before rent, staff, travel, or facilities. Some leagues manage this better than others. The German Bundesliga posted the lowest wages to revenue ratio among Europe's top 5 leagues, at 54%, which helped German clubs post their highest operating profit in league history. Ligue 1 in France sits at the opposite extreme, with wages consuming roughly 80% of revenue, as several clubs struggled with falling income. And even with billions in revenue, actual profit stays rare. Premier League clubs combined reported pre-tax losses of nearly £950 million in a single recent season, a dramatic worsening from the year before. A huge part of that comes down to transfer spending, clubs paying enormous fees to buy and sell players, spending that shows up on the books as a loss, even when it's really an investment in the squad. So, why do billionaires and sovereign wealth funds keep buying clubs that lose money? Because for most owners, Profit was never really the point. Football clubs function less like businesses and more like prestige assets, a way to buy visibility, influence, and cultural relevance on a global stage that almost nothing else can match. That's why state-linked wealth funds, foreign billionaires, and international investment groups keep competing for clubs, even in leagues where the average team loses money every single year. That's the real economics of football club ownership. Massive revenue, even bigger spending, thin or negative margins, and an ownership model built not around profit, but around prestige. Subscribe for more real business economics.